Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, and today's video we'll be covering 8 new Nintendo Switch eShop sale games worth buying, so let's get into it. Now real quick before we jump in, at the time of posting this video all of these games are on sale, but if you want to make sure to not miss out on any future sale videos and upcoming videos we put out, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications so you can take advantage of these great deals when they come out. But with that said, let's jump into the video. Alright, so the first game on the list is Collection of Saga Final Fantasy Legend. Now this is actually a collection of 3 Final Fantasy Legend games that originally came out on the Game Boy. I remember having these RPGs growing up and playing them on the Game Boy, and some aspects may seem a little clunky to today's standards, but at the same time, it's a whole lot of fun if you want to revisit this blast from the past and some of these classic RPGs. So in the first Final Fantasy Legend, you're playing as a band of heroes where you get to actually choose which type of heroes you want. So there's humans, there's monsters, and there's also mutants that you can choose from. And so you have that variety of choosing your entire party at the start of the game, and each character type has a little bit different mechanic of how they level up and play in the battles. And so humans will get more powerful as you equip better weapons and have one-time use items to level them up. Mutants kind of have a random level up sequence, so you'll be leveling up your abilities throughout battle, learning new spells, and much more. And then monsters are unique where you have a base monster that you start with, but then after some battles you'll gain meat, which you can feed to your monsters, and will evolve them differently throughout the game. So it's kind of some unique mechanics, but everything beyond that is pretty much a traditional RPG where you'll explore different towns and go throughout the story, leveling up your characters and fighting enemies, and taking on powerful bosses. The next game in the collection is Final Fantasy Legend 2, and this one is probably the one I played the most growing up. And so in similar fashion, you'll create your party, but this time around you have some new choices for your party mix. So you've got humans and mutants, and this time robots, which give you the ability to equip all kinds of items, but they're a little bit less powerful as a robot. So similar to the first game, it has sort of a random leveling mechanic, and I know when I first played the game, I found it pretty challenging and difficult, but when I revisited the game, I found myself grinding a bit more, and that made my characters a lot more powerful. It was just a little bit hard to track, because it's not like your traditional turn-based RPG where you're gaining experience, you hit a certain amount and then level up. So it's something to pay attention to. It has a little bit of a different feel, but it's still a lot of fun going back and revisiting this classic. The third game on the collection is Final Fantasy Legend 3. And so this game follows more of a traditional level up mechanic, so you will gain that experience and have your characters level up. So it has that traditional RPG feel. And outside of that, it's just going to be your traditional turn-based combat, typical RPG of following that story arc throughout the game, taking on many random battles, and facing off against an ultimate enemy at the end of the game. So overall, if you like classic RPGs, I recommend checking out this collection of 3 classic Final Fantasy Legend games from the Game Boy. Alright, the next game on the list is Curse of the Dead Gods. And so this game is a roguelike dungeon crawler. Seems like there's a lot of those these days, but this one definitely stands out and was a whole lot of fun. So in similar fashion to most roguelike dungeon crawlers, you'll fight waves of enemies and explore multiple dungeons and take on bosses at the end. But since it is roguelike, it is rather difficult and you'll likely die a lot throughout the game. But each time you do, you'll progress a little bit further, gaining items that you can level up, different skills, unlock new abilities, as well as find a bunch of different base weapons that you can start the game with, which give you a little bit different feel as you progress. And so there's different weapon types which really have a different feel to them, so that adds to the replay value. But another element that's a little bit challenging with the game is the combat. And so again, instead of just a hack and slash type combat, you do have a stamina meter, and so as you use abilities, you'll drain that meter and then it can slowly recharge over time, or it can also recharge based on the timing of specific attacks. So if you're dodging attacks perfectly or you're parrying attacks, you can refill that bar. So it gets into a lot of strategy within the combat versus just a simple hack and slash button masher. Another thing that's unique about this game is the curse mechanic. And so as you explore and progress through different levels of the dungeons, you'll acquire curses, which might start off as a little bit of a nuisance, but eventually get so intense that there's not really a way for you to win if you reach that curse threshold. So it's something to keep in mind, and you need to balance as you go through the dungeons as well. Like similar other games in the roguelike fashion, you do have the option of branching paths as you go from dungeon to dungeon, and this really plays into your strategy as well as how far you can get throughout the dungeon. So you might be choosing an easier path so you can progress further in the dungeon. You might get extra gold, which you'll use in later stores to acquire new items, and there's a bunch of different options to choose from, which really keep the replay value high and the gameplay addicting. So if you're looking for a new roguelike dungeon crawler to play, I recommend checking out Curse of the Dead Gods. Alright, the next game on the list is Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, and is more of a remaster slash mashup of the original Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts. And so it features some new levels, but also some classic levels that have been remastered. And this time around it has a unique art style and some options to make the game a little bit easier, so it's more accessible for the average player. Now, growing up playing Ghosts and Goblins, it was definitely one of the hardest games out there. It can be super frustrating, but once you master the system and learn how to play, it gets very satisfying and a ton of fun to play. Now with this game, as I mentioned, it is incredibly difficult, but there are different settings you can add to make the game a little bit easier until you really get good and try it on the difficult, crazy levels within the game. The story isn't super complex, it's more like the hero goes to rescue the princess from evil, and that's about it. And so you'll take on waves of enemies through intense action platforming and massive bosses throughout the levels. The game also features a skill tree, which gives you the option to learn new abilities and skills for your character, which again can make the game a little bit less difficult as you go through. The game itself isn't super long, but obviously it's pretty difficult and has a high learning curve, so you're going to need to get past that and die a lot, but once you figure that out, you'll be able to progress a little bit faster. But after you do beat the game, there is sort of a shadow version where you can replay levels, and they're a little bit different, which can extend the replay value of the game as well. But overall, if you want to revisit an updated remastered version of an arcade action platforming classic, I recommend checking out Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. Alright, the next game on the list is Atelier Ryza. So this is an RPG that really snuck past my radar, but I'm glad I found it, as it becomes really addicting and a lot of fun. And so the story is pretty slow moving and doesn't really get into the meat of the story for quite a while. And the game starts off as friends going on an adventure, trying to get out of their dull small town, but encounter a vicious monster and are saved by someone using alchemy. And once your main character Ryza sees that, she wants to learn everything there is to know about alchemy, and that leads on to an epic adventure throughout the game. And so the game is pretty huge. There's tons of side quests to go through, and one major element that the game focuses on is crafting and finding items throughout the world. And so it kind of seems a little bit like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where you're constantly picking up items from all across the world, but this time you're going to use those to craft different items, craft different weapons, and much more. And so it is a huge part of the game doing that crafting. So if you like being kind of a hoarder in a video game and crafting a lot, you'll definitely enjoy that part of the game. But the combat is very satisfying as well. It is a combination of sort of a turn-based RPG with an active battle system, kind of like more modern Final Fantasy games. The game has a great anime art style, and if you're looking for a new RPG, I definitely recommend it. The main version and the deluxe version are on sale right now, so if you like what you see, I recommend checking them out. Alright, the next game on the list is Saga Frontier Remastered. And so this is a classic RPG from the PlayStation 1 era, and it sort of reminds me of Octopath Traveler in a sense, where in this game you have the option to choose from a bunch of different playable characters that all have their unique story arc, and you can play through them in any order you choose. The game also has kind of a open world feel to it, where you have the ability to travel across the solar system to a bunch of different planets as you choose. So sometimes that can get you sucked off into side quest world, and it can often be hard to keep track of the main storyline, but it is cool that it gives you that freedom, especially when this is a game from the PlayStation 1 era. The gameplay also features a unique level up mechanic that's similar to the original Final Fantasy II from the NES. And so again, how that works is that you will attack enemies or use abilities, and they will get stronger as you use them. So if you use a certain weapon a lot, you'll increase proficiency. If you use magic a lot, it can boost your MP, different things like that. And I've always found that kind of level up mechanic is super addicting, because you can really customize and build your characters exactly how you want to use them based on the actions you use with them a lot. And so the combat is more of a traditional turn-based combat, but at the same time it has a unique combo system, so as you acquire more characters in your party, you'll be able to unleash devastating combos if you utilize specific moves in the right order. And so it's kind of cool getting to discover these different combos as you play, as you try and mix and match different abilities. There are some different quality of life enhancements to this remastered edition. So again, they've updated the graphics a bit, and there is also a speed up option, which can maybe help you get through the grindy parts a little bit faster. But again, if you want to check out a remastered classic RPG, I recommend checking it out. Alright, the next game on the list is Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. So it had been many years since the original trilogy of Crash Bandicoot came out, and so when they revisited the series, I was a little bit skeptical on how good this game was going to be, but I think they really nailed it. The game features great action platforming, which is similar to the original trilogy, but they really took it to a whole new level and added some new mechanics that fit right into the gameplay. And so as you explore the world, you'll unlock new masks, which will grant you additional powers throughout the game. So some of these masks can help you swap gravity, so you'll be able to flip that around. Others will let you slow down time. Some give you crazy spin moves where you can hover for a bit, and much more. And so these mechanics really add to the action platforming and lead to some unique levels throughout the game. Beyond that, the game has multiple different characters you could play as, each with their own unique skills and abilities, and that kind of reminded me of Donkey Kong 64 or maybe Sonic Adventure 2, where you have the different characters with their own skill sets you can play with, and that added to the replay value. And on top of that, there's different challenge modes, time trials, and even a mirror mode that you'll unlock throughout the game, adding additional replay value. So if you like 3D action platformers, I recommend checking out Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time. Alright, the next game on the list is Atelier Ryza 2. And so this game revisits the story from the first Atelier Ryza and takes place a few years later. And so at this point, all of the characters have kind of grown up and moved on to their own separate lives. And you revisit Ryza and her life and how she feels a little bit depressed that she hasn't really achieved everything she wanted to and is ready for a new adventure. And so this time around, you'll go on an adventure uncovering the history of alchemy and a mysterious creature Fee. And so again, this game is very similar to the first game in a lot of aspects, but overall things have just been a little bit more refined. And so crafting and item hunting is a huge aspect of this game as well. So again, you'll travel across a massive world, finding different items, crafting different items, which will not only help you build up your inventory and make you more powerful, but also helps you unlock new skills and abilities. This time around, the game also has some more enhanced exploration options, making dungeon crawling and exploring the world a little bit more interesting. Again, the combat is more of a mix between a turn-based RPG and some live action elements, and seemed a little bit like the Tales series in a sense, but with a little bit more focus on the turn-based aspects. So for example, you'll control one main character using their different abilities, but you can switch between other characters on the fly as well in battle to unleash their abilities throughout combat. So if you like crafting and exploration and a fun story with great anime style graphics, I recommend checking this out. Alright, the final game on today's list is Bobble 4 Friends, The Baron is Back. And so this game revisits an arcade classic Bobble and enhances the graphics and modernizes it a bit with an all-new adventure. And so you play as 4 dinosaur dragons, but this time around you're actually plush dolls come to life. And so all of the stages are built within toys within a child's room. And so you'll go on an adventure as these 4 dino dragons taking on the evil Baron as you go through hundreds of puzzle-based levels. And so each level, again, is more of a puzzle-based theme where you need to kill off all the enemies on the level and collecting fruit along the way to get the high score. It features the same type of arcade-style gameplay as the original Bobble, but they've added some modern mechanics to the game as well. And so in the original game, you would typically find different items or fruit that would unlock special abilities for your characters, but this time around, you have abilities that you can equip to your characters, giving them unique powers. So it might be a long shot, it might be a lightning bolt, or sending out bombs, and a couple more options as well. And you can actually equip these before the levels, adding a new strategy element to the game. Another neat factor is that in the original arcade game, you'd release your bubbles and sometimes they'd go in random directions, and it'd be hard to tell why they were going a certain way or not. But this time around, there's different air currents that you can see throughout the levels, which give you an idea of where your bubbles are going to go, which add a new level of strategy to the game. Now the base game itself isn't super long, it has 50 levels that you can clear, but once you clear that, you'll unlock a hard mode, which give you another 50 levels, and then you also get access to the base arcade game, which has 100 levels, and then there's also another Baron is Back arcade style game, which includes another 100 levels. So it gives you a lot of levels to play through. The game maybe doesn't take too long to get to the ending, but you can play with local co-op up to 4 friends, so it definitely gives you a lot of reasons to revisit the game, and it's super fun getting to work together and clear these puzzle challenges. It features some of the classic music from Bobble, but also adds in some new soundtracks to the game, so it's not just the same song on repeat, no matter how good it is, which was refreshing as well. But if you want to revisit a classic puzzle game, I recommend checking out Bobble 4 Friends, The Baron is Back. Well again guys, that wraps up this video on 8 new Nintendo Switch eShop sale games worth buying. If you like this video, be sure to smash that like button as it really helps out the channel. If there's any games I missed or other great games that are on sale right now, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to check them out. And if you like videos like this on video games, board games, and everything nerdy, check out one of our other videos here. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.